Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Broadway Jets YouTube channel. You'll know me from Twitter as NYJ Mike. I'm joined as always by the master of receipts, NYJ Matt. Matt, we have a very special guest. Everybody knows who he is. It's Connor Hughes. He covers the Jets and the Giants for SNY. And today, the New York Jets have fired general manager Joe Douglas after 6 seasons. He finished 30-65 with his record as a New York Jet general manager. What a crazy whirlwind season. And we have the insider who broke it himself, Mr. Connor Hughes, here to join us. So interesting times, boys.
Yeah, I would say so. I would absolutely say that that's a correct characterization of the time right now.
So, Connor, we talked about it a little bit before, but I got to know the live reaction to you receiving the news and being the first one to break that. A lot of people say the Jets beat writers do not break any news. Connor broke that myth today. He did it. How nervous are you to get that out the right way? Make sure it is correct. You can't have any spelling errors. You're the first one to go. Was it like an adrenaline rush to get that tweet out?
It's the best. It is. Like anytime you break news, any story, like no matter how big or how small, like I broke a couple signings this off season, and it's like even the Lakey Fotu one was one that I broke, and like he's not a household name by any stretch, but that'll give you the same rush as anything else, just because it's news that no one else has. You have it, and you're putting it out there first. But this one was a unique one because I didn't necessarily see it coming. It wasn't one that I was searching on or digging on, because you have stories like that where you kind of get an inkling something's going to happen, and you're working your sources, you're working the people that you know, talking to people in the building, trying to get word that like, okay, go, like it's there, like let's grab it. This was not one of those situations. This was one where quite literally I was in Target with my wife and my daughter, and we, out of pure coincidence, ran into my sister there. So like we were just sitting in the aisle talking, and I wasn't looking at my phone. I don't know why I picked up my phone at that moment and just happened to look, and I saw a text from somebody within the Jets building, and it just read, "Woody just fired Joe," and I'm like, I check, and it was at 12:06, and I was reading this at 12:08, and I'm
It was a
like,
Joe Mama joke. You're like,
yeah. I was like, Joe who? Joe Douglas? And they go, yeah, he just fired Joe. Crazy, 6 weeks left on his contract. And I'm the person who told me is he's not. He would know. Like, there's no need to second confirm that. Like, that person is like, he's not going to steer me wrong. He's right. So I tweeted it, broke it. But at the same time, as soon as you hit send on any break, there's almost that like several minutes of waiting for somebody else to confirm it, just so you're like, okay, there's like the confirmation. Like that's like the ultimate of like, okay, and then you can exhale. Like I remember I had one break, like when the Jets traded Denzel Mims, where I say it now, like the guy who actually traded Denzel Mims was the one who told me. And I was like, and even when I sent that one out, there was like 3 or 4 minutes of like, wait, did he lie to me? I'm like, wait, no, he's the one who pulls the trigger. Like he definitely would have told. So it was one of those things. So it's exhilarating. It's a rush, but it's always fun. It's one of the more exciting parts of the job.
yeah, it's so interesting to like just a different perspective on the business. What about the
No, yeah.
timing of all this, Connor? Like, you know,
The
you
why
you,
now? The why now is going to be a big question. I wonder if you can tell us.
yeah, you get a head
I
start. Like,
Yeah, I wish. I'll be honest with you. So, like, I wish I could explain that, and the best way that I can describe it is that when Joe Douglas was hired as the Jets general manager, he received full and complete control of the team. What I mean by that is that he was in charge of the roster construction, the draft, the free agency, all that stuff. When they then moved on from Adam Gase, it was Joe Douglas who found Robert Saleh, and then that's when they changed the organizational infrastructure where the coach reported to the GM and the GM reported to the owner. And that was the hierarchy of how this whole thing was going to work. Um, that was the case through January of this year. In January of this year, that's when, Woody and ownership and the higher ups started basically taking control of the Jets back. They were unhappy the way things were run. They were unhappy with the way that things were happening, and they started having a much greater say, to the point where Joe Douglas was kind of reserved to the point where he was doing what he was told to do rather than what he thought the Jets should do. And running into Joe a handful of times, you could tell that his demeanor and his mental makeup had changed. Like he looked sad a lot. Like he was not a really happy person. anymore. And I think it was because, again, like he had lost so much of his power, warranted or not warranted. Letting him go now and firing him now, I do believe that, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that when you quit, your contract becomes unguaranteed and you lose all that money, I think that this firing was welcomed by all sides, where the Jets now can get a jump start on finding their next general manager as they're doing it as we speak. And Joe Douglas can also get a jump start on finding where he wants to go next. And I keep an eye on the Philadelphia Eagles as one of those places.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Mopey Joe Douglas, you see him twice, 3 times a year. His mid-year press conference a few weeks back was very
Weird.
uncharacteristic. For 5 years, he sat at the podium, answered questions. This year, he's standing on the practice field looking all sad. It just felt like a different person. And you bring it back to
100%.
January, right? So Woody takes more control of the team.
Yeah.
At that time, though, you still have a roster that you think can get to the playoffs, and you are the odds-on favorite to potentially win the AFC East. There's a story from Albert Breer that ownership really looked at Jets Twitter or just the internet on where to sign guys. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then I think about, well, they signed Tyron Smith, Mike Williams. They made a big trade. They traded for Devontae Adams a couple weeks ago. Do you think that's true? I know you said ownership took more control, but are they really the ones pulling the strings here? Is Woody getting his one guy in the front office saying, make this move, it has to be done? And it's hard to believe, but you never know.
I don't think that it's Twitter said this is why we're doing it. I think that ideas are formulated from social media. I think that there are it's a tool, and look, I mean, we live in a day and age now where social media isn't just some idiot at the bar drinking shouting out that he thinks that they should trade 17 first round picks for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, there are you two are a perfect example, honestly, of it. Like, I mean, like, no, not blowing like not blowing smoke up your ass or anything like that, but you guys, you don't have the New York Times or the Daily News or the New York Post backing you. There's no major outlet sitting there funding you for your opinions, but you've using social media and the power of social media have built a brand for yourselves and have a podcast that people listen to and all that stuff. So the day and age of the sport fan being some idiot nincompoop who's just shouting out, drunken ideas, it's over. Like, there's so much informed opinion based off of the access that you guys have to the all 22s and watching the games and all that stuff, where yeah, I do think social media can be used as a tool. Now, how much of a tool is it used inside the Jets building? Is it too much? Is it not enough? I don't know. I don't really want to comment too much on that, but I do think it's something that certainly is aware, and it's been reported on pretty heavily now by a couple different outlets that it's something that's considered over there.
I'm so fired up right now.
Yeah. I say you guys should just start adding the Jets to your W-2s and then really take it to the next level.
I made like
Consultants.
$40 off Twitter this year.
Yeah, Jets consultant. Yeah.
Man, Connor, where do we go from here, dude? So your article today was what? The Jets or Rodgers just no more 2025.
I would be stunned. Yeah, at this point, I would be very, very surprised if Rodgers was playing for the Jets next year, because from my understanding, and I've said this a few times now, but continuity and stability were the big things for him, where if he was going to come back, he didn't want some new general manager in here that was going to completely change the structure of the roster. He didn't want a new coach that was going to come in here and bring with him a new offense. When he joined the Jets a couple years ago, guys, I mean, it was done because he wanted to go back to what he knew, as in KNEW, like what he was familiar with. He didn't want revolutionary. He didn't want something NEW knew, like he had in Green Bay with Matt LaFleur. And I think that if you think about it, like with the new GM changing the roster, the new coach bringing in a new offense, it's just not something he's going to sign up for 41 years old. So at the end of this year, again, if Brick was coming back and the offensive staff and Joe was coming back, then yeah, I think you would have seen Aaron Rodgers run it back again with the Jets in 2025. I would not rule out in any way, shape, or form him playing next season, but I would just be very surprised if it's with the Jets. And from my understanding as well, I've said this a few times now on SNY, the Jets organization and the higher ups of the Jets organization would prefer a wholesale fresh start, and that's a GM which is coming, head coach which has already come, or GM which has already come, head coach which has already come, and then also at quarterback.
Yeah. And
Is there anything Rodgers? What if the Jets go 5-1 down the stretch, and Aaron,
Sure.
Plays lights out ball? These things do affect the the thinking going forwards? Or
Yeah, I mean, look, the X factor in it all is Christopher Johnson, because he and Aaron are very, very close, and maybe he can convince him to come back. Maybe they do finish some lights out finish to the year, and they dominate the Dolphins, and they kick the what out of the Bills, and they beat the Seahawks, and they beat the Rams, and they look like a really good team that just was in a funk. But now they snapped out of it, and Jeff Ulbrich looks like a real head coach, and then they can just tweak the staff a little bit, and they bring everyone back. But at this point, guys, and it's, I mean, it's upsetting to say, because it is kind of a doom and gloom outlook, I should say. But what have the Jets shown within the first 11 weeks of this season that would in any way, shape, or form indicate to you that that's going to happen? Like, this is the team that lost to the Patriots. This is a team that just lost to the Colts. This is a team that's inventing ways to lose week in and week out. Why do you believe they're going to go on a 5-1 stretch? Why do you think they're going to win out? Like, why? It's just, we haven't seen it to this point. And I will say that from doing some digging from players that I know within the locker room, coaches that I know that are interacting with the players, I wrote this today for SNY. It's when teams are 3-8, like last year or 2 years ago, there was a lot of anger and people that were pissed off, and I wrote this once after the Zach Wilson infamous game against the Patriots, where he didn't take blame after the game. The defense hated the offense, and the offense, fractions of the offense hated other fractions of the offense, and that's almost like what you want when things are going bad, because it shows that players truly care and they're pissed off and they want to figure out a way to get it fixed. That's not the case right now with the Jets. And in fact, everyone that I've talked to just paints a picture of guys just being checked out, and guys just kind of being like waiting for the season to end. That they know they're not making the playoffs. They know that it's kind of like, well, we're gonna have a new coach, we're gonna have a GM. What are we doing? They're playing for individuals, playing for their next jobs, but there's not this sense that I get where guys are about to rally and finish strong. I get the sense that a lot of these guys are just they're waiting for the vacation to start and head down to Cancun after the season's over.
I think that's fair, and that's a concern for the final 6 weeks. Mike and I have talked about, the days are gone of Rodgers being a top 7 quarterback, right? Obviously, but it's like, yeah, there are glimpses of top 15, and a top 15 quarterback with a great defense can make it work. He hasn't been top 15, and the defense has been bad, so everything kind of goes south. But, and Connor, I know you have to go in a minute here. I do want to ask, Woody and Christopher do like Aaron Rodgers. That's proven. That's a fact. They love Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
They moved
Christopher
mountains to
does.
get him
Yeah.
here. If you cut him, you have $50 million in dead cap. If he retires and doesn't keep playing, you still have dead cap, but it's more serviceable. Do you think this ownership might say, hey, look, maybe we sell a GM and head coach and say, hey, 1 year of a Hall of Fame quarterback, he might be a top 20 guy, if that now. But hey, you can use him for a year as a gap year. See if you find magic with this team. And if it all fails, which it very likely could, you're going to get your clean sweep. You can still draft a quarterback this year. Do you think that this opening now, this head coach GM combo, is potentially enticing, knowing that Aaron Rodgers could be your gap year where you can be great with him, or you can still draft a guy and it might not work out and you have a whole time to rebuild your team? I just wonder if the worst thing that could happen is that the Jets, which very well could happen, I hope it doesn't, get rid of Aaron Rodgers. He goes to a team like the goddamn Giants. The Giants bring in a staff like Bill Belichick and a crew, and you watch them win 10 games or 11 games. I would set myself on fire live on YouTube if that happened. So ask a few questions there. But
Clip that boy Green. Clip that boy Green. Save it.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Definitely going to.
how enticing, like, do you think that they could stomach that $50 million pay cut, him going to a different team? I feel like Christopher might say, let's run it back and let's sell it to this new combo that this isn't a terrible position. And hey, my brother who's impulsive is now in the UK.
What you said is in, I don't mean this as a derogatory term to you at all, but like it makes a lot of sense if you're playing Madden. And what I mean by that is like and I don't even mean that like video game, from a like just black and white building a team. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because Aaron Rodgers still isn't awful. Like he's still, like you said, even if he's top 20, he's still a top 20 quarterback in the NFL. He's going to start for you. He's proven he can stay healthy this year. You put him out there even as a bridge quarterback, it makes a lot of sense. It does. Like, he's better than anything you are going to find in free agency as a bridge quarterback, where who's it going to be? Daniel Jones, Jacoby Brissett? Like, who's your other bridge quarterback? He's not going to be a better option than Aaron Rodgers. And if you still believe in the receivers and the players around Aaron Rodgers, you say, look at this, guys. Like, we can make this work. Like, Garrett's still going to come back. Devontae's not going to come back because Aaron's there. We're going to rework this. We'll get a new coaching staff in. But the Aaron Rodgers factor in all of this is the major point. That is the part of the equation that people aren't considering, where at 41 years old, he's not going to want to learn a brand new offense. There are coaches, they're going to look at him and realize that he is very stuck in his ways of what he wants and aren't going to want to work with that. And there's also the fact that there are a number of people that I've talked to, some high ups in this organization, that would just prefer to move on. That would just prefer a fresh start with a new coach and everything. They don't really like what the 2 years have come with and some of the headlines that have come with having him. They're not a big fan of it. So yeah, in just a black and white X's and O's football sense, what you're saying makes sense. But I just unfortunately I don't see it happening. Like, I really don't see it happening. And I do have to look more into the numbers, because I think there's something that can happen where the hit isn't that bad, where it's not like 50 million or something like that. It's been a wild day. I haven't had a chance to like really break that down yet. I thought I had a couple more weeks. But I got to go through. But I don't think the hit is that egregious if it happens. And the other flip side too, guys, is that there is the chance that there's not that many teams out there that are going to want Aaron, where he will end up being in retirement, especially if his number one request is something he's familiar with.
It's fair. And hey, I know we're at time here. So Connor, thank you for joining the program just for 15 minutes here. The guy that broke the story today. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem, dude. If you guys want, we'll do something a little bit later on this week, where I just, unfortunately, I got some stuff I got to get to, but we can do some stuff later on this week and do a little more time, like 30, 40 minutes, whatever you guys need.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on, buddy. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, Mike. Connor Hughes joins the program.
Yep.
Pretty cool. Again, that scenario that I played out is a what if, right? I think the betting market is probably the house is going to be clean. You're getting a new quarterback. But it's that little glimpse of, well, what if you did that as a bridge? You draft a guy in the first round. Do you find anyone better than Rodgers? You're not going to pay a guy not on the team and playing for a different team. Just a perspective. Let's have that conversation, but not the
I don't know, man. I feel like it's not as unrealistic as people say. I just don't. It's not that crazy to have this guy come back and be the quarterback. Connor has real sources, and I'm not debating him or disputing that. And we'll have him back on, and we'll dive deeper into it. But one of the main things that I've been talking to people about online recently is the argument of a lot of Jet fans don't even want Rodgers back. And that is something that I disagree with wholeheartedly, because I don't think that Rodgers is the issue in these circumstances. We haven't done a podcast since the Cardinal game, which was tough. And I thought more on the defense, but of course the offense doesn't score. Now we've talked about it. Like, Rodgers still on pace for 3,700 yards, 26 touchdowns. You know, you want to say mobility, throwing the ball down the field. The numbers are the numbers. I think the eye test is a little bit better than people say. And the Jets, for example, last week, you start off the game with 5 straight drives, no first downs. Barstool Sports is tweeting that, all this shit. Then you score on 5 straight possessions. I don't see another tweet of, oh, these are the next 5 possessions. Just frustrating, weird narratives. Jet fans are ready to run out the first competent quarterback we've had in 10 years with pitchforks. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, and after the Pittsburgh game, when this narrative started, I remember after the Pittsburgh game, I tweeted, I still think at this point, best path is Rodgers comes back in 2025, and I got murdered for it. I think I lost like 100 followers over that time, and the more and more the season is going on, I can understand the take much more of, hey, clean house, start fresh. I get it. The other thing I would call out, and you have been the most pro Aaron Rodgers Twitter account out there. You get a lot of likes, you get a lot of hate while you do it. The eye test, it's not just him, it's the whole offense. The eye test of the offense has not been fun. And a few of the stats, people are going to cherry pick those and burn you for it and be like, oh, you're not watching the games, the stats. There's been some weird games where his stats have been actually pretty good in like quarters 2 and 3, and he like doesn't pass in the fourth quarter. Like the Bills game, I think he had 265 yards through 3 quarters. Had like 30 in the final half, under 300. But yeah, I think if you're asking me gun to head right now, I might disagree with Connor. I do think that the Jets ownership is not going to pay a guy not under the building. And again, he said Madden, but all I'm saying is you keep the guy under contract. Like
You
in
already
that
have the
scenario.
guy. It's not right. It's not
Yeah.
so crazy. And listen, if he's going to go play for someone else, he's going to learn a new offense. Maybe you can get someone in here that's more accustomed to playing under Rodgers type style. I mean, the thing too is like it just there hasn't been a lot of complimentary football with the Jets this year. The run defense is porous and teams hold the ball for a long time. The special teams has been a disaster. Of course, Rodgers hasn't been like an MVP like we were hoping he would be. He obviously is not. So there are all these different factors, but also like if you improve the coaching and you improve the run defense, we don't need to improve the quarterback position. This has not been the issue. And one of the main points I've been making online is that there are 3 games this year where if you take exactly what Aaron Rodgers did, I'm not talking about any what ifs on offense where it's like, what if he made this throw? No, if exactly what he did is what he did, and the other 2 units did something below average and normal, you win the football game. If you make a field goal against Denver, you win the game. If you stop Jacoby Brissett from going 80 yards and scoring a touchdown, you win the football game. And if you stop Anthony Richardson 1 out of 2 times from going 80 yards and scoring a touchdown, you win the game. So those 3 cases, if you win 2 or 3 of those games, we're not having these conversations, I don't think. I think we're gearing up for a playoff run, and then that changes next year dramatically. So that's very frustrating to me, where the same exact thing happened, and yet we're going to do the next thing based on different results, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and look, from my perspective, gone are the days where I actually fundamentally disagree and think you're wrong in the event that you wanted to clean house. Now at 3-8, I completely understand that perspective, and we can
Right,
have
that's an argument. That's an argument.
that legitimate argument. But
But I'm
one
talking about
thing
the evidence that you're using to blow up the team is the same evidence either way, where based on Aaron Rodgers' play, 2 things could have happened, and the thing that's worse for the Jets team happened, but it didn't have anything to do with the quarterback. So why are we changing the quarterback?
Yeah, and I think I can stomach it better knowing those outcomes you talked about, those 3 games that could have flipped, whatever. This team, regardless of win-loss record through 11 games, could not win a Super Bowl this year. Regardless of win-loss record. Take win-loss out of it. They have
probably
not,
not, but then you'd have more chance to click. There's more time. You go all in.
I
hear
know.
you.
But I'm saying take off wins and losses and pretend like there was never a scoreboard on any of these games.
At
and
this
now you're
point,
on,
I would not think they're going to win the Super Bowl.
and now you're week 11. So I can stomach and say, geez, I was wrong. This team, even if they won those games, like I can't see them going to a Kansas City, to a Baltimore, winning these games
Well, you
because
played Buffalo pretty well, so
yeah, no, I don't see it clicking and winning a Super Bowl right now. And if you have that thought now, am I going to have that same thought in 2025? Maybe I won't. Maybe they get the right head coach, the right GM. They get a few guys in here. They keep a lot of guys. Maybe I'm dead wrong. But I still think you have to look inwards and say, what is best for 2025 and what is best for 2027? If you care as a Jet fan right now about 2027 and you're like, I don't care about the next 2-3 years, I want to rebuild, I care about 2027, you get rid of Aaron Rodgers tomorrow. 100%.
Right.
If you care about 2025 like we do, and you're saying, I'm tired of another playoff drought, fuck another rebuild, you have a guy here that has shown in glimpses this year that he can be top half of the league. It's not good enough. I understand that. But this guy could be the bridge if you draft a quarterback in the first round to get you to the playoffs. I care about 2025, and I could be wrong. In the next 6 games, Rodgers can throw for 150 yards a game, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, looks terrible, not mobile. Different story. It's not been good. It's not been good through the 11 games,
right.
And we'll see where it lands. But yeah, I can't fight with everybody on Twitter because even if I tweet, hey, Joe Tippmann has looked good this year, they're like, I hope you die in a car crash. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's just you went all in. You have this roster that we keep talking about that clearly, like even Connor said, feels like a lot of individuals put together. You've made that point before. It feels like 11 independent contractors out on the field at the same time. That's what coaching is.
Yeah.
You know, so you have what is shaping up to be a bad coaching staff. It's hard to tell because you don't have like another staff coaching the team at the same time, so it's hard to compare. But it feels like a bad coaching staff when you are favored to win the division to come into the year and you're 3-8. Even though there's been some fluky weird losses, it's a lot of it is on coaching, and the quarterback hasn't been exactly what we thought. But I'm sitting here, the guy's got 2,400 yards, 17 touchdowns, 7 picks. It's good enough to win football games, especially with what we saw last year. So I'm just beyond frustrated, Matt. I don't want the dream to die. I do not, and this is what people don't realize when you stop it, when you give it up, when you get rid of Rodgers, when you blow this thing up, that's it. That was your one chance. You could just do it again, and it could work. And this is the point I was making also online yesterday. Was this situation reminds me a lot of 2008 going into 2009. The 2008 Jets missed the playoffs with Favre. They had a good roster on paper. They were more successful. This comparison will be better if the Jets finish strong. It will. If they go 4-13, it's not the same thing. But the Jets went 9-7, missed the playoffs. They decided to clean house. Brett Favre had an A year, and then they got Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez and had 2 magical seasons. But Brett Favre went back to the Vikings and was 4th in the MVP, and the Vikings also went to the NFC Championship game. So it's very interesting, Matt. I don't know if the Jets are going to draft a rookie quarterback and go to for the AFC Championship game next year, but I think they have a much better chance with Mr. Rodgers, and I just wish we got more time to see this. I think if a couple of those games flipped earlier in the season, the Broncos game, the Bills game with the missed kicks and this weird officiating with the Tyron Smith hold, any of these games flip and you just have more momentum going into this season, and maybe it feels different. But where we are, and I think the Jets and people are going to make decisions based too much on black and white things like the record of the team instead of evaluating next season or what the quarterback has actually done. But we'll see.
Yeah, Mike, I do have to run. Last thing I'll leave you with is the media will call out that Rodgers, everything he touched burned down. It's his fault, chaos. Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh aren't here if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers. Douglas very well could have been gone in 2023. Saleh would have probably survived 2022 and maybe got fired halfway through. Like there's no Saleh Douglas 2024 season if Aaron Rodgers isn't here.
Right.
They got a past year, right? So what happened in 2023? You ran Zach Wilson back out there, and what happens? Like, all I'll say, Mike, is I don't blame Rodgers at all for what happened in terms of Saleh and Douglas. Everyone could have played better. They could have coached better. They could have been a better GM. So it is what it is. I'll say this. You said we don't want the dream to die. Very different scenario, but reminds me of 2020 when we're sitting there and we're like, we just don't want to lose Sam, and you just won't have it. Like, he's gone and you're not going to have him back. And if we wanted him to be the guy to do it, and we want Rodgers to be the guy to do it, and he has 6 weeks to really prove something, because at this rate, the fan base, the ownership, the higher ups, it doesn't look promising. So, Mike, with that, we finally made it back. We were gone for 2 weeks, and we'll do a video sometime soon, later on in the week.
How sad, man. How has it come to this?
Yeah. Joe Douglas gone. I want to do a tier list of every Joe Douglas free agent and draft pick, like an hour and a half pod of everyone. We'll bring in someone good. We'll bring in Buffalo Jet fan. I keep saying we'll bring in someone good for it. But Mike, I'm gonna go eat dinner. I gotta run. I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Made this far. Subscribe, like. Appreciate you all.